What Zena the demon really wanted was to stop Itakuen, the person who understood Sari-chan best, from dying because of her curse. Her plan was to turn him into a demon strong enough to survive it. Itakuen flat out refused, no matter what was being offered. Zena reminded him he owed her. He was only still alive because she'd stepped in. She told him to drink the potion in front of him. It was a special medicine that could demonize a human body, rare even by demon world standards. She was doing this for both of them, and she wasn't taking no for an answer. The wound Itakuen had taken from that thug was lethal. Zena had used sorcery to heal him, a gesture of gratitude for him saving Sari. There'd been nobody around to see any of it. Everyone had already run. Zena had put Sari to sleep first. Sari stirred faintly. Still, Itakuen processed it slowly. So he really had been stabbed back then. The thought made him shudder. Zena had transported them both to an empty park and used sorcery to close the wound. It had taken serious effort given how deep it was. She added, almost casually, that she was always secretly watching over her precious daughter. So even without Itakuen there, she could have handled that trash herself. What he did was basically pointless. She pressed the point. He wasn't going to say no to the person who saved his life, was he? Itakuen looked pained. He muttered something that sounded like the start. A girl in a hoodie cut and hard. Ida needed to stop and think. Becoming a demon was insane. He shouldn't let this thing talk him into it. She pushed further. Even if Ida became a demon just to survive Kajura's curse, did he actually want to live like that? Ida went quiet. Then his face settled. He'd rather die. Zena, for her part, showed off a demonic form midair as if to illustrate her point. Sari stood nearby looking faintly alarmed. Ida's hand moved on its own. His grip tightened around the vial. He couldn't control it. The girl lunged to smash the bottle, but her hand stopped dead before she could touch it. Zena noted, almost cheerfully, that destroying the medicine required considerable magical power. The girl wasn't going to be able to touch it. Ida stared at the vial spinning slowly in his trapped grip. His mind raced. The demon told him plainly. This was the only way Itakuen and Zena could stay together. If he couldn't accept that, she'd just force it down his throat. Ida panicked and screamed for Sari-chan at the top of his lungs. Zena told him resistance was pointless. She had enough magical power to force his mouth open herself. Then Ida's expression shifted. Something clicked. He held the vial up toward his own mouth voluntarily, or at least it looked that way. Zena paused, surprised. He screamed Sari-chan's name as loud as Sari-chan heard it from inside and came to the door, confused about what was making Itakuen shout like that. Itakuen screamed that Ser, BR, and their crew were flashing their underwear again. Sari froze. Then her face went pale. She screamed. The curse erupted. Itakuen and the girl launched through the air. The vial flew. Everything scattered in a violent burst of energy. The ground cracked on impact. Zena stumbled, dazed, and looked around for the medicine. The vial shattered. Itakuen lay on the ground, satisfied. His plan had worked. He'd known Sari-chan's curse could pull it off. The girl stood over him and told him not to use people's curses like tools. She wasn't impressed. Sari-chan arrived at the scene, completely lost. Itakuen and the girl were fine but wrecked. She had no idea what had just happened. Zena went still. It was over. No medicine, no point in staying. She turned to Sari and said, flatly, that she was taking her back. They were leaving. Sari looked up at her, startled. Sari asked why she had to go. Was this about going back to their old house? Zena said yes. They weren't coming back here. She asked if that was clear. Sari said her mother's name quietly. Ida watched from nearby, and it clicked. Was this because he'd said no? Sari's voice tightened. She told her mother she had always done what she was told. But this time was different. Sari demanded at least a reason. Why did she have to say goodbye to her friends? Zena stayed silent. She couldn't bring herself to answer. Then, quietly, she told Sari the truth. If Sari stayed here, eventually she would end up killing the people around her with her own hands. Sari's expression crumbled. Zena spun her hands in a fast, nervous gesture and apologized. She felt dizzy. A dark portal opened beside her. She told the humans this was the last time they'd see each other, then stepped through with Sari, who wobbled and barely managed to stay upright. The portal snapped shut. The girl grabbed Itakuen and told him to calm down. She reminded him they lived in a different world from Kajura. Itakuen explained it clearly. Even if Kajura wasn't aware of it herself, staying here meant Ida was the one who would die. The girl cut in, he didn't need to pay that price. Itakuen went quiet. Then he nodded. She was right. He muttered an apology toward where Itakuen grabbed Zena's arm before she could fully pull away. She reacted with surprise. He told her he hadn't spent his whole life trying to be decent just for nothing. He wasn't turning into a demon. And he wasn't going to lose to some curse either. Zena demanded he let go. She asked if he wanted to become a demon that badly. Sari, being dragged along, could hear his voice. Zena blasted him off. She wasn't letting some ordinary human stop her. The impact burned through his grip. He hit the ground hard. The girl stared, frozen. She stood over him, stunned. Itakuen had been turned to stone from the waist down, arms still raised, expression locked mid-shout. Zena said it plainly. If he didn't want to be a demon, he could be a statue instead. After trying to stop Zena from forcefully taking Sari-chan back home, Itakuen had been turned to stone by sorcery. Zena told the girl not to worry. The sorcery would wear off in a few hours. He'd been a nuisance, so she'd just hardened him. She added that using that much power had left her without enough energy to teleport. The girl stared at the stone Itakuen and muttered to herself. Somewhere dark and weightless, Sari thought of Itakuen. She couldn't hear his voice anymore. She wanted to see him. Itakuen drifted in the same dark place, heavy and disoriented. He had no idea where he was. The only thing on his mind was that he hadn't been able to do anything. A voice nearby asked if he was excited. He had no idea. The thing in front of him was enormous and grotesque. A hollow, skull-like face with a gaping mouth, pressing close. Told him he wanted to be excited, didn't it? Itakuen recoiled. He recognized it as one of Sari-chan's curses. He demanded to know why it was there, and why the others were there too. He wondered if Sari-chan was cursing him right now. The curse shoved its face close and announced she'd put her heart into it. The others crowded in around him, all screaming about toughness. Itakuen yelled at them to back off. The curses pushed harder. You're not giving up, right? You want to be even more excited, right? Itakuen stared at them. They were cheering for him. He didn't quite know what to do with that, given what they were. One of them threatened to twist him if he didn't get moving. Another kept yelling toughness. Itakuen asked, genuinely lost, if they were really rooting for him. He wasn't giving up. He grabbed the nearest curse's hand. Just this once, he told himself it didn't matter what they were. He asked it to lend him its hand. Something burst with light. Zena sensed it. She told Sari it was time to leave. She had gathered enough power again. The girl noticed the cracks first. The stone around Itakuen was breaking apart on its own. Zena couldn't believe it. A human breaking out of her sorcery was impossible, and finding someone in this world capable of it was unheard of. Then she realized. Sari said his name quietly, pressing her hand against the crumbling stone. It was her feelings for him. They'd given him the strength of curses. Itakuen burst free. Stone shattered outward in every direction. Zena stumbled back. The curse was rebounding. The sorcery turned back on Zena and petrified her. The girl noted they weren't safe yet. It would wear off fast. Zena was already wobbling, starting to break free. The girl moved fast, drawing a seal on the ground and activating it. A barrier locked into place. She announced it should keep Zena from coming back for a while. The effort cost her. She shook from the strain. Itakuen called her name. She asked how he'd managed to break Zena's curse. The curses were still swarming Itakuen. Delighted. The girl screamed at them to get away from her. Itakuen just said it was the only way out. He turned and found Sari-chan on the ground nearby, dazed. She said she couldn't remember anything after arguing with her mother. Sari's eyes filled and tears ran down her face. She grabbed onto Itakuen and cried loudly, full-on sobbing. Itakuen froze, completely thrown. He hadn't expected this. She'd thought that was the last time they'd ever meet. She'd thought it was goodbye. Itakuen said they didn't want to say goodbye either, and looked back at the girl for backup. She didn't particularly confirm or deny it. Zena's voice came through, calm and distant. If Ida-san wanted to stop Sari from leaving that badly, then she would give up on taking her home. Everyone looked up, startled. Sari called out to her mother. Zena asked Itakuen to keep Sari safe. He said of course, without hesitating. Zena told Sari she was glad she'd made a friend like Ida-san. Then, she said she was going home alone. Sari said her mother's name softly. Sari confirmed it brightly. Itakuen was a very important friend to her. Zena addressed the girl too, and said that given the circumstances, she'd allow her presence as Sari's friend as well. The girl told her to mind her own business. Zena left with whatever trick she had, politely wishing everyone a nice day. Sari and Itakuen exchanged a look about it. The girl just stood there. That night, Itakuen lay flat on his back, exhausted. What a day. He told himself it was all over, then corrected himself, not quite all of it. Just like Zena had said, the curses would eventually consume him and kill him. That was still there. The curses pressed close in the dark beside him. They'd helped him today, but one day they might be what killed him. He didn't want to think about it. He decided to just sleep. His parents were at a relative's house. His little sister was on an overnight trip. The place was quiet. He got up to brush his teeth before bed and padded down the hall. Something felt off while he stood at the sink. Zena was in the bathroom mirror. The air turned heavy. She greeted him pleasantly and told him there was something important she needed to do here. Itakuen stood there, toothbrush in his mouth, completely unable to process why Zena was in his house. Itakuen couldn't figure out how Zena-san was in his house. Wasn't she banished from the human world? Zena explained that the body standing in front of him was just a clone, no magical power. The barrier that girl had put up only kept her real body out. She'd come to hand something to him. She complained the chair was tiny and the house was cramped. Itakuen told her she was just too huge. She set a container of small dark pills on the table. They could neutralize the negative energies building up inside his body. Itakuen stared at them. Zena told him if he wasn't going to become a demon, then he could take these instead, one with every meal. Itakuen started to say something about what she was doing for him. Zena cut it off. Whether he lived or died was everything she did was for Sari. Itakuen was nothing but a convenient tool. Sari watched from the doorway, quiet and a little emotional. Zena added that the medicine alone wouldn't be enough to fully clear out the negative energy. She'd be sending over other products from the demon world as well. She asked if that was all right. Itakuen said yeah, he was glad he could help. Zena noted to herself that he was as selfless. With that, she said she was leaving Sari in his hands. She'd be focusing on governing the demon world for a while. If he needed her, he could call her name. She vanished. Itakuen stood there, thinking about her. She really did treasure Sari-chan. Then he noticed the damage Zena-san had left around the house and started worrying about what to tell his family. Morning. Still wiped out from the day before, Itakuen dragged himself to the table. He had school. He remembered the pills, one per meal. He dug through the container, not quite awake, and took what he thought was one. He wondered if he'd just taken two. He swallowed them anyway. He decided it probably wasn't a big deal and sat there half asleep over breakfast. On his way out, he passed the coffee shop, Comfort Miyashita. The owner greeted him cheerfully and asked if he'd been working out. Itakuen laughed it off. He walked out, and his arms were enormous, like genuinely massive. He noticed mid-step and panicked, then sprinted back home screaming that he'd forgotten something. He caught his reflection at school. Buff didn't begin to cover it. He stared at himself and had no idea who that person was. The girl appeared in the doorway. She told him flatly that this was what happened when he didn't follow the dosage. Itakuen wailed Zena-san's name. Zena's voice came through the badge clone. The medicine was made from her sorcery. Follow the dosage and it was fine, but overdose and these side effects kicked in. It was basically a medicine's curse, she explained. Unlike the vial from before, this one wouldn't last long. Itakuen asked how long, because his parents were coming back tonight. Zena said it would probably wear off by afternoon. That meant he had to skip school. The teacher told the class Ida was unwell and taking the day off. One girl complained she'd needed him to help with student council documents. Another was upset about cleaning duty. Sari heard it and went quiet. She wondered if it was because of what had happened at her house the day before. She was worried about him. After school, Sari said bye to Yoshinaga-san and started home. She kept thinking about Itakuen. Her friend mentioned there'd been a lot of police cars around and brought up a bank robbery from the day before. The culprits had gotten away. Sari said goodbye and headed off on her own. The girl dropped down from above right in front of Sari, startling her. Sari demanded to know why she'd been hiding. The girl deflected. She pointed out that Ida wasn't around today and suggested they walk home together given the robbers still being loose. She said it as if she was just being practical. She steered them down a narrow back path between buildings. Sari asked if they were really going that way. The girl told her not to worry. Inside, she was working her plan. She'd suspended a tank of holy water, roughly 1,000 liters, right above the path ahead. Knowing Ida was home, she decided to use this setup she'd prepared. Kajura would walk right under it and that'd be that. Since Sari was following without any suspicion, this was going to be easy. One trip wire, one release, and it was done. The girl had made her decision. Even if Kajura herself didn't know what she was still the legendary demon's daughter. She intended to deal with both her and Zena, whatever the cost. She yanked the trigger and screamed Ichino-san's name. The wrong person was in the trap zone. The water crashed down somewhere behind them. Sari spun around, confused. The girl was face down on the wet ground, soaked, completely stunned. A voice from behind Sari told her to stay calm. There was a police car on every street. They had nowhere left to run, and they needed a hostage. Sari recognized them. The bank robbers. 3 of them masked, crowding close. They needed a hostage to negotiate with police, they told her. They hoped she didn't mind coming with them for a bit. From the ground nearby, soaked and furious, the girl slammed her fist down and yelled at them to give Kajura back. Sari-chan had become the bank robber's hostage. Police surrounded the building, demanding through a megaphone that the hostage be released immediately. The robbers told them not to follow and ordered 100 million yen in cash and a getaway car, warning that something might happen to the girl if they didn't comply. One of the robbers pressed close to Sari and told her to stay still. Their knives tended to swing around unpredictably. Sari flinched. From somewhere nearby, the girl was yelling at the robbers to give Kajura back. She couldn't figure out how things had ended up like this. The girl screamed that Kajura's life belonged to her and demanded to know who gave them the right to take her. A police officer told the girl to calm down. The robbers were getting impatient. They muttered that the police weren't responding fast enough. Sari told the girl not to worry about her. Back home, Itakuen sat in front of the TV, exhausted. What a day. He reminded himself to be more careful with those pills. He dozed in front of the news. The report came on. Bank robbers on the loose had holed up on a rooftop with a civilian hostage. Police were surrounding the building. Itakuen muttered that was rough and felt bad for whoever the hostage was. Someone grabbed the microphone. The girl had grabbed the microphone and was screaming into it at full volume about the criminal scum who had the nerve to take Kajura Sari hostage. She was going to make them pay. She fell off something and the medicine rattled off the table. Itakuen stared at the TV. He'd spent all that time setting up his trap and they'd ruined it. She was screaming. He watched her lose it completely on live television. He'd already taken a lot of the pills. His body started cracking and groaning. Something was happening. Outside the city lights, the robbers were getting angrier, demanding the money and accusing the police of stalling. On the rooftop, a robber grabbed Sari and threatened that if anyone tried anything reckless, she was the one who'd pay for it. He looked her over and made a comment about her body. Sari flinched. Sari called out for Itakuen. The robbers laughed. Ida? Whoever that was. There was no way he'd come all the way up here to help her. A voice outside the perimeter responded. The girl demanded they release Sari-chan. It was Itakuen. He'd arrived in a fully transformed demon form. Enormous, winged, completely unrecognizable. He landed on the rooftop and said he was there to save Sari-chan. The robbers shook. They screamed that Ida was a monster. Sari, still blindfolded, called his name, confused. Itakuen told them he was just a high school student. The robbers told him that was absolutely not what they were looking. He swept the robbers off the roof, sent them flying. He snapped the rope binding Sari's wrists, then caught her. He told her he hadn't wanted to end up like this either, and asked if she was hurt. Sari said his name. He carried her off the rooftop. She thanked him and said she would have been in serious trouble if he hadn't shown up. He said he was glad she was safe. One of the robbers, still lying on the roof, murmured that it was a monster. He slumped over. Sari mentioned she should take off her blindfold. Itakuen told her to do that later. He suggested they go home first. From the police perimeter below, the girl had felt a strong magical presence in the sky. She'd pulled out her family heirloom binoculars, officially named St. Twin Phoenix, practically just binoculars, and spotted them. She stared through the lenses at Ida carrying Kajura through the air in full demon form. She demanded to know why he'd turned into a demon after all that. When police finally went up to the roof, they found the robbers incapacitated and muttering about a monster. No hostage anywhere. Police concluded the criminals had been lying about the hostage all along to gain leverage in the negotiation. Later, Itakuen arrived at Sari-chan's house. He told her she could take off the blindfold now. Sari came to the door surprised. She asked how they'd gotten all the way back to her house. Itakuen said that if there was a will, there was a way. Sari apologized. She'd caused him nothing but trouble, and he'd even taken a sick day because of it. Itakuen told her he wasn't doing any of it against his will. Being able to save her made him genuinely happy. That was just how he was. Sari looked. She tried to tell him to be careful on his way back, but he was already gone. He moved fast. She stood there for a moment. He was kind, modest, and considerate. She found herself thinking he was a lovely person. Meanwhile, Itakuen ran home, relieved that at least his upper half had returned to normal before she'd taken off the blindfold. His lower half was still very much a problem. His legs were still enormous and not reverting at all. He ran home stomping craters into the ground and yelled at Zena-san for help. Zena's voice came through the badge. She guessed the nutrients from the overdose had concentrated in his lower half. She mentioned, almost cheerfully, that he'd looked quite good in that demon form, and suggested he just start taking large doses every day to keep it. Itakuen absolutely refused. Zena thanked him for. Sari-chan came to school with a smartphone, and her classmates immediately noticed. She announced she'd finally gotten one and agreed to exchange contacts, inviting people to the class group chat. The guys across the room lost it. This was their chance to get close to her. Itakuen was already there exchanging contacts. The guys worked themselves up debating whether to go ask her directly, add her through the group chat, or just have someone else do it. Nobody could agree on who should step up. Itakuen had already beaten them to it again. Sari agreed to exchange contacts with Itakuen without hesitating. A classmate asked if they were dating. Sari went wide-eyed and denied it loudly. They were just good friends. The classmate shrugged and dropped it. The guys deflated. The girl watched from across the room, unimpressed. All that fuss over a phone. She told herself she had no need for one and didn't want one either. She wasn't like everyone else. Then she walked off humming quietly, already thinking about what model to get, because she needed to gather information on Kajura. No choice but to get one. That evening, Itakuen soaked in the bath, thinking about how happy Sari-chan had looked. She'd wanted a phone for a long time. He thought about sending her a message, then immediately got stuck on what to actually say. He could text one of his guy friends without thinking about it. But to a girl, he had no idea. He decided they'd see each other tomorrow anyway and left it at that. He got out and heard his phone buzz in the washroom. He went to check it. The notification looked different. One of Sari-chan's curses was holding his phone out to him in the dark. It told him he had new notifications. He yelped. His mom came rushing over, alarmed. He told her it was nothing. The curse shoved the phone at him again. He looked at the screen. It was a notification from Sari-chan. He asked himself why now. The curse told him to go ahead and open it. He opened the app. Nothing there. The curse said it had disappeared. It vanished too. Ida-kun stood in the hallway wondering what that was about, and whether something had happened to Sari-chan. The toilet door rattled. His mom was in there. Another notification sound. He checked his phone again. Nothing. He thought about texting Sari-chan anyway, but she hadn't actually messaged him first. He put the phone down and told himself to just go to sleep. He lay down, drowsy. The curse appeared again and announced he had new notifications. He told it to shut up. It was probably nothing. He tried to ignore it. The voice grew, and then the curse was right in his face in the dark, pressing close, repeating it. A whole crowd of curses suddenly surrounded him, all announcing new notifications at once. He screamed. He told them there was nothing there and to stop multiplying. They shoved his phone at him and told him to look. He gave in and agreed. At Sari's house, she'd been staring at a message she'd typed out. Something cheerful and friendly addressed to Ida-kun, but hadn't sent it. It had gotten late without her sending anything. She wanted to message him, but something held her back. Ida-kun was a man, and no matter how close they were, that still meant something. The remark about them dating earlier had stuck with her more than she expected. Ida-kun hadn't sent her anything either. Then her phone buzzed. It was Ida-kun. He said he was just checking in on her. Sari told him she'd also wanted to message him first but had hesitated. She said it felt almost like her feelings had reached him. He apologized for being nosy. She told him he wasn't nosy at all. She was happy. He mentioned it wasn't her feelings exactly. It was her curse. They were creepy, he admitted, but they'd helped him figure out what she was hoping for. He laughed about it. Sari hid her face behind her phone and smiled. He asked if she was still awake. Sari settled in. He was her important friend, that was all. It didn't matter that he was a guy. Ida-kun lay in bed afterward, content. They talked a lot. That was fun. But the curses were still there, pressed close, watching his phone and announcing there were no new notifications yet. They didn't leave until Sari-chan finally calmed down and Ida hauled a ridiculous stack of school bags through the school gate while his classmates lost their minds cheering him on. Someone in the crowd announced it was a new personal best for bags carried on behalf of the girls. Another voice shouted that Ida had entered a whole new dimension of messed up, and that it was somehow cool. Ida made it through the gate, wheezing hard, every muscle in his body screaming at him. He told himself his gentlemanliness level had definitely gone up from that. A girl nearby thanked him warmly. He told her not to mention it, and meant it because he really couldn't handle talking about it right now. Someone nearby muttered that there was no way a guy like that existed. Right as another voice cut in, saying some Ida guy was out there carrying even more school bags than anyone had managed before. That got the attention of a sharp-looking guy nearby, who demanded to know what was going on. Then something massive thumped into the scene. The robot, labeled MAE all over its body, stomped forward, and the reaction from the crowd was immediate and baffled. Nobody had any idea what they were looking at. A tall, composed upperclassman explained that what everyone was staring at was a service humanoid robot developed by his company's engineering department. He called it Smart Gentle. Ida hit the floor. The upperclassman stood there like he'd rehearsed every angle of his own entrance. He introduced himself as Miyaharuki and declared himself the true gentleman. He then looked down at Ida on the ground and told him, flatly, that he didn't qualify. A gentleman, in Mia's view, was someone who was always beautiful and smart. Mia turned toward Sari and announced with total confidence that he was the one worthy of standing beside the lovely Kajurashire, not Ida. He'd come prepared. The Smart Gentle robot had delivered gifts into the girls' bags, restaurant invitations and boxes of high-grade chocolate. The girls who found them were stunned and pleased. Kajura confirmed she'd also found something in hers after Miyakuen had it delivered. The crowd erupted. Students murmured to each other that the weird third-year, Mia-senpai the gentleman, was the son of Mia Heavy Industries CEO. Ida stood in the middle of it all, watching, trying to figure out who this guy even was. Someone with a notebook filled Ida in. According to their intel, Mia had been patiently waiting for a chance to take Kajura-san away. He confirmed Ida was from class 2 to 7, then filed that information away like it mattered. The thought stuck with Ida for a second, whether he actually was worthy of being by Sari-chan's side. Lunchtime, Kajura walked in carrying a box of homemade cookies and offered them to the class. Her friends immediately swarmed her, calling her feminine charm off the charts. She noticed Ida and made sure to include him too. Ida had pushed himself way too hard that morning. His whole body hurt, and he couldn't stretch across the desks to reach the cookie box without it hurting worse. He told her as much, half laughing at himself. He really wanted one though. Kajura looked at him for a moment, then held a cookie up and told him she'd feed it to him. Ida made a noise. She moved the cookie toward him. He accepted it, flustered, and managed to thank you. Ida's face went red. The whole thing was embarrassing and he knew it. Kajura, for her part, immediately realized she'd just done something pretty embarrassing herself. She stood there holding the cookie, going still, her face warming up as it hit her. Ida watched her fidget and stare at nothing. He waited. A third voice cut in from nearby, dry and unamused, pointing out that she could have just slid the cookie box over to him. Kajura snapped back to reality. Ida admitted that yeah, that would have worked fine. He laughed, a little too quickly, like he was trying to move past it. Smart Gentle had been standing in the doorway, camera active, recording the whole thing. Mia was watching the live feed on his phone, trembling. He called Ida, full name, class and all, an imbecile. He couldn't stand how casually Ida kept getting close to Kajura. Kajura, visible on the feed in the background, covered her face. She sounded genuinely pained watching herself back. Mia gripped his phone, shaking harder. He'd sent every smart, calculated move he had at Ida. Gifts, setups, the robot. And yet somehow none of it stuck. Note, that's, not very gentlemanly. Mia stared at the feed, seething. He'd thrown everything at this, his resources, his planning, and Ida kept getting closer to her without spending a single yen. He couldn't make sense of it. Kajura confirmed to a classmate that she was pretty tired today, but not as tired as Ida was, she added, in a flat tone that made it clear she'd noticed. Her classmate asked why she seemed tired at all. Kajura explained she'd had a day off the previous day, which should have been she'd spent the entire day cleaning her house, which was far too big for one person. That alone wasn't the problem. The problem was that the moment she finished, her dogs tore through the whole place again. Turned into a loop. Clean, dogs rampage. Clean again. That didn't stop until late at night when the dogs finally wore themselves out. She hadn't slept. A classmate said they now desperately wanted to visit her house. Ida, listening from nearby, thought quietly that it probably would be the best home ever imagined for someone like her. After school, outside, Kajura was visibly dragging. Ida checked on her. She admitted she really wasn't okay. The lack of sleep had caught up with her and she could barely stay on her feet. Mia clocked her state immediately from a distance. He thought about making his move, but Ida was right there in the way. Ida, without overthinking it, turned to Kajura and offered her a piggyback ride home. Kajura pushed back at first. She said he was exhausted too, so there was no need. Ida insisted there was no need to hold back and that he was totally fine now. He was not fine. The moment she climbed on, he looked like he was genuinely dying. Kajura asked, very calmly from his back, when he was planning to actually start walking. Ida's body had already given up once this morning. It was giving up again now. A girl watching nearby called it pathetic, all that confidence for nothing. Ida bowed his head and apologized. Kajura told him it was all right. Kajura slid off his back, steadying herself. Then Mia appeared, satisfied and smooth, and pointed out, loud enough for everyone, that Ida Harinari had failed to help Kajura when she actually needed it. But, Mia continued, he was here to save the day. Mia pulled up in a luxury sports car. The engine sound alone drew stares. Ida froze. Mia leaned out, all composure, and noted that Kajura looked very fatigued. Kajura confirmed she was, yes. Mia announced he'd drive her all the way home. Kajura's eyes went wide. He assured her he wasn't the type to ignore someone who needed help. With his car, it'd barely take any time at all. He insisted she get in. Kajura hesitated. She tried to say she was fine, but she wasn't convincing anyone, least of all herself. Mia held the door. She got in. Kajura thanked him. Mia told her she was very cute. Ida stood on the sidewalk watching. He said nothing, just a long pause. Mia glanced at him before pulling away and told him he hoped he'd learned something. What it took to be a true gentleman, Mia said with a card between his fingers, was wealth. The car sped off. Ida stood there watching it go, looking deflated. A girl nearby remarked, completely matter-of-fact, that a piggyback ride and a luxury car ride weren't really comparable things. Ida registered the comment. He didn't have a comeback. The girl looked at him. Not unkindly, just level. And that was somehow worse than if she'd laughed. The car drifted around a corner and disappeared. A girl standing nearby sensed something, magic, coming from that car. She paused on it. Then she reasoned it was probably just because Kajura was riding in it. That made sense. But for just a moment, she'd felt it from somewhere else too. She couldn't confirm it now that they were gone. Maybe she was overthinking it. Ida sat slumped on the ground behind her, thoroughly finished. Mia drove down the highway, clearly pleased with himself, remarking to Kajura that the ride was comfortable and that he'd picked up the car at an auction. Kajura agreed, though she trailed off like she had something to add. After a while, she pointed out that he'd been driving for quite some time and asked where they were headed. Mia laughed and admitted he had no idea where they were going. She asked to know their destination. He couldn't bring himself to answer. The sole weakness of the otherwise flawless Mia Haruki, by his own assessment, was a terrible sense of direction. He was completely lost. The navigation system had stopped working. His phone had no signal. He gripped the wheel and noted with forced calm that Kajura was starting to look anxious, so he needed to start a conversation. He brought up Ida, how the guy had tried to carry her home on his back. Kajura confirmed that was true. She laughed, calling Ida a funny person. Mia, less amused, wondered internally if Ida was trying to be a joke. Mia forced a laugh and agreed. He told himself to get Ida out of her head. The car skidded. A faint image of Ida flashed through Kajura's mind, grinning and waving, and Mia caught a glimpse of it and did not appreciate it at all. The car lurched and accelerated on its own. Both of them jolted in their seats. Mia demanded to know why it was speeding up. The steering wheel started turning without him touching it. He panicked, the dashboard had gone haywire too. The car was driving itself, recklessly and fast. Mia sweated through it, wondering if this was happening because he bought the car at auction without reading the fine print. He'd just picked the most expensive one. A user's manual slid out of the dashboard. Neither of them had ever looked at it. Kajura picked it up and read. The manual cheerfully explained that the car was famous for having killed 300 previous owners in crashes, and should only be used as a display piece. A talisman had been included just in case. The car was cursed. The manual also had instructions for breaking the curse. Getting passed by a faster car would shatter its pride and break it. They just needed to find something faster. Kajura quietly asked if there was any other way. Mia was shaking. The car tore through the road. Kajura clung on, terrified, and called out for Ida-kun. Meanwhile, Ida was on a dinner errand, riding his bicycle down the street. He thought about Mia-senpai and his luxury car, then looked down at his bicycle. That was kind of depressing. He pictured Mia and Kajura together and figured there was no way his bicycle could compete with that. He decided to just go home. His bicycle started picking up speed on its own. He tried to brake. Nothing happened. His legs kept pedaling on their own. The bike got faster and faster. He realized with dread what that meant. A massive spectral face loomed behind him, wearing a cap labeled Takashi. The bicycle was cursed too. Ida, rattled but trying to stay polite, asked whatever it was if they could please stop. He'd like that if it didn't mind. The cursed bicycle and the cursed car were now both tearing down the same road at the same time. The car couldn't stop. The bicycle couldn't stop either. Mia yelled for it to stop driving. Kajura screamed. Ida somehow ended up alongside the car, rang his bell, and thanked the ghost for the assist, in the most unbothered tone possible given the circumstances. Mie was done. He called himself a failure of a gentleman and yelled for someone to help them. Then Ida appeared right next to the car window, screaming at the same speed. Mie could barely believe it. He recognized Ida immediately and called out to him. Ida, equally stunned, called back. The bicycle pulled up alongside the car, both of them screaming. The car's curse broke. It had been passed by something faster, and its pride couldn't handle it. Mie saw the opening and grabbed back control of the wheel. He stared at Ida, something shifting in his expression. Kajura's eyes were wet. She whispered Ida's name. Mie went quiet. The car had been passed by a bicycle. Of all things, he thought it was over for him. The moment hit Kajura before anything else did. Ida had come, whether he meant to or not. The car finally stopped. Mie announced he could drive again. He turned to thank Ida, but the bicycle wasn't slowing down. The shot passed, and Ida's bicycle smacked into the car with a thunk. Ida and the ghost Takashi were both screaming at each other about how fast they were still going and demanding the other stop. Eventually, it all came to a halt. Ida thanked the ghost, a little dazed. The ghost seemed satisfied. So that car really was cursed. Ida confirmed it like it was mildly interesting news, still trembling a little. Kajura told everyone that Ida-kun had saved them. The girl from their school who'd been watching the whole thing noted she'd known something felt off about that car. Ida had apparently reached them at something close to the speed of sound. The next day at school, Mie addressed the group and said he had something to tell everyone. He apologized formally to Kajura for the previous day. Kajura said he'd already apologized plenty the day before. There'd been a lot of him face down on the ground begging her forgiveness. Then Mie turned to Ida and said he owed him an apology too. Mie admitted he had assumed that being rich made him the ideal gentleman. The day before had proven him wrong. He'd been completely helpless without his money. But Ida had used something other than wealth and pulled it off. Ida started to point out that it was really just the curse doing the work. Mie wasn't having it. He pointed at Ida and called it superhuman physical power. He announced he would acknowledge Ida as a proper gentleman from that point forward. Ida told Mie he was a wonderful gentleman himself. Mie grabbed his hand. They shook on it, firm and direct. Kajura watched them, smiling. The narrator noted that on that day, the two gentlemen had shared a handshake. Ichino-san watched from nearby, genuinely baffled, wondering what a gentleman was even supposed to be anymore. Ida sprinted through the school hallways during lunch, completely winded. Kajura called out to ask what had him so busy during the break. He explained that he'd accidentally agreed to help too many girls at once, and was already behind on the list. Someone nearby pointed out that the range of things he'd taken on was way too wide. Ida listed them off between breaths. Fix the gym roof, sit in for the female vice principal at a staff meeting, fill in for a missing concert band member. He kept running. Ida declared that it was helping girls out that kept him going. It gave him purpose in life. Mid-sentence, he went dizzy and dropped. A teacher nearby looked up. Kajura, who'd been watching, called out his name in alarm. The school nurse, Hashina Ayaka, said he was just overworked and it'd pass on its own. She confirmed he could rest in the infirmary if anyone was worried. Kajura thanked her. The nurse told Kajura that lunch was almost over and she should head back to class. A staff member knocked and asked Hashina-sensei about next month's health checkup. She turned to deal with it. Kajura told Ida she was heading back to class and to take his time. The door slid shut behind her. Ida sat up and insisted he was fine, that he wanted to help girls out. He started to get off the bed. Kajura, who hadn't actually left yet, pushed him back down and told him to stop thinking about work for the day. Ida tried to get up anyway. Kajura physically kept him down, telling him he wasn't getting up and he wasn't going anywhere. The two of them wrestled briefly, Ida insisting he was fine, Kajura insisting he absolutely was not. She told him enough was enough. Ida gave in. He looked at her for a moment, then agreed that she won. Kajura leaned close to make sure he stayed put and started to tell him he could get up after, then caught herself and pulled back. She said the real problem was that he'd just run away the moment she let him go. Ida flatly refused to do that. She pointed out he absolutely would. The bell rang. Kajura sighed, said class was starting. She told him to rest and to notify everyone he'd promised to help. Kajura told him to rest properly and left. The door slid closed. Ida lay there. He thought about how that was the first time he'd seen her actually angry. He told himself he didn't even need to rest. Then he put his head down and decided to take a nap anyway. Time passed. Ida woke up and immediately felt the urge to go help someone. His gentleman withdrawal symptoms were acting up. He apologized mentally to Sari-chan and tried to move. He couldn't. He realized he couldn't move at all and figured out what was happening. Sleep paralysis. It was not sleep paralysis. Two enormous cursed figures loomed over him, screaming that it was time to sleep. Ida, barely holding it together, called for his mom. One of the figures told him his mom was there. Ida was confused. A voice called through the curtain, asking if that was Harinari, saying she'd heard he collapsed. Ida had no idea how she got there. The curtain slid open and a monstrous cursed figure labeled MOM crawled in. Ida asked who that was. The thing that claimed to be his mom held out a peeled apple carved into the shape of a skull and told him to eat. Then the two cursed figures crowded around him, insisting it was all wonderful and that he could feel the love. Ida gave up and said to do whatever they wanted. A few hours later, school had ended. Kajura and another student rushed back to the infirmary. The nurse tried to calm everyone down. Kajura demanded to know where Ida was, then stopped when she saw what was in the room. Every single person Ida had promised to help had shown up at the infirmary. Furious. The vice principal was among them. They told Kajura they knew she and Ida spent time together, so she had to know where he was. All their plans had fallen apart because Ida agreed to help and then disappeared. Kajura was horrified to realize he'd never notified them. Ida, apparently awake and hearing this, realized the same thing at exactly the same moment. Kajura bowed repeatedly and apologized on his behalf. The others said it wasn't really her fault. She explained that Ida had been exhausted but still wanted to go help everyone, and she'd been the one to stop him. Ida heard that from behind the curtain. Kajura continued, he was someone who cared about everyone around him, and also the type who'd ignore his own health because of it. She'd known that. It had always. She said she wished he'd take better care of himself. Then she added that the one who actually ruined everyone's plans wasn't Ida. It was her. She'd been the one to stop him. Ida stared at the curtain from his bed. The nurse came over and told Kajura it wasn't her fault. Ida pieced it together. That was why she'd wanted him to rest so bad. The girls said it was their fault too for relying on him so much, and agreed Ida should rest. One of them announced they'd just go finish everything themselves. Kajura said she'd help too with whatever she could. Mia-senpai appeared in the doorway and offered his assistance, saying it sounded interesting. Mia said naturally he'd help however he could. Smart Gentle stood behind him, ready for anything physical. The manga club member asked if someone could draw backgrounds for her. Mia noted Smart Gentle would be useful for heavy tasks. Someone wondered aloud if Ida was just a master of all trades. From behind the curtain, Ida told them all thanks. He thought he could finally get some real sleep, even with the weird things still next to him. The next day, Ida burst into the classroom lugging an enormous living coelacanth, which flopped around wildly. A footnote clarified that hunting coelacanth was banned under international convention. Kajura winced and asked how he was feeling. Ida, thrilled, announced he was feeling better than ever thanks to everyone's help, and plopped the fish down in front of her. Kajura told him making sure he rested was important. Ida held up the fish and told Sari-chan that by resting properly and building up his stamina, he could unleash his gentleman abilities at an even higher level than before. He gave a thumbs up. Kajura stared at him, completely blank. Ida bolted out of the room with the flopping fish. Kajura watched him go, and noted that at least he'd started taking proper rest after that. Someone nearby muttered that he was still the same eccentric gentleman.